Hello everyone, welcome to yet another BDotnet Wednesday Hangout. I'm Senthil Kumar, I'm the moderator today, and for all those who are new to BDotnet Wednesday Hangout, BDotnet Wednesday Hangout is an initiative by Bangalore.net user group where we try to get in a speaker on every Wednesday between 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. Indian time, and then we talk about developer related topics here. Yeah, so uh, I- I- So for today's session, we have Pooran. Pooran is a .NET architect or a consultant, and is closely associated with the Bangalore .NET user group as well as XHackers and Xamarin user groups as well. And he was a Microsoft MVP for 3 years. And today we are going to see a session about Breeze, a JavaScript library, which is a recap session of the WebEd, a conference that was conducted by Bangalore.net user group recently. And without wasting much time, I hand over the session to Pooran.
Hello everybody, my name is Pooran Prasad and I'm a consulting architect in a couple of companies, and this is the head. You can reach me at about.me. You have all my LinkedIn, Twitter, all the profiles. I also blog at pura.in, where I have a lot of sessions on ASP.NET, a couple of things that I like about blogging. On Facebook, you can go to BDotnet and register a lot of questions that you can get answered, or for almost all the issues that you have, small issues, big issues, doesn't matter, post here. I also lead another group called XHackers, which is basically Xamarin, which is an application that will allow you to write C# iOS, Android, and Windows applications, Windows Phone applications using C#. On XHackers is also on XHackers group. If you can go to XHackers, you'll get that information also. Now, coming back to our topic of the day, Breeze.js. What is Breeze.js? Breeze.js is a very simple way of exposing your APIs from a server side, and at the client side, you have a single page applications or just multiple. It doesn't matter if you have multiple pages. What we're going to have on the client side is pure HTML, JavaScript, CSS, and that can actually talk to your database with a very minimal coding. I use Breeze mostly for quick prototypes, and there are applications where we're using it on a full-fledged application scale. It's pretty easy to use. Today we're going to talk about how to get started on Breeze and how we're going to use the client side, how we're going to use the data that is rendered out of Breeze server side to in the browser client side. So in a nutshell, what it provides you a rich data. That's what the big thing they're putting it across, right? Rich data applications for your JavaScript. So it also provides you a client-side caching. So once the data is come onto your client side, is received on the client side, you can do the caching of the local data. You can add, edit, update, whatever you can do. And once you say submit, it just goes back to the server. And it also keeps track of all the changes that you do, all the events that are raised, all the changes to the metadata, everything. And it provides you rich data queries. It internally uses a OData layer, but it doesn't expect you to open up a OData on the server side, but it makes sure gives you a option of doing a query on a server in a very neat way. It gives you a lot of filters, a lot of ways of ordering. If you are comfortable with OData and how to use the data on the client side, you will love this. Now, coming back to mobile, it also provides a very rich services on the mobile side. Think of it, in mobile, most of the times I've seen people do a mobile web application and it is hosted on a server and it is rendered everything from server. So if there is no internet connection, obviously you'll not be able to log in, right? Be it Wi-Fi or 3G. Now, a mobile application, it expects you to be always connected but it cannot be the situation all the time. So what Breeze.js allows you to do is same single page application that you're going to write, or multi pages again. The application is actually hosted as a local application. Like you put, if any of you worked on PhoneGap, you will appreciate the fact that www folder that you're going to put, the whole code you can just dump as is and start working. It's like everything is on client side. So if you actually implement the client side caching, storing of data in local storage, you can actually give the end user a full-fledged live experience, though the application is not, I mean, you're not connected to net. So in nutshell, these are the major features that Breeze.js provides. There are a lot of there are a lot of tutorials that you can use. There are some to-dos which allow you to do more example. There are a lot of features it gives you on, explains you how to query, create, modify, delete, and all those things. You can run through a lot of them. I would like you to look at two important things. Understand this part very easily. Very simple thing. You have an entity manager on your client side. I will talk first about client side, so you'll understand it when I put it on the server how it works. By default, Breeze has something called entity manager, which is your one point contact on your client side. So this guy also has an inbuilt cache model. So think of server side exposed as a client side, server side schema that is there, that is exposed as metadata. That metadata is it's like your objects on your JavaScript, which is a replica of what your database is all about. Okay. Entity manager and metadata are two important things, and then you have query. All your entities are available, and also your query is available. There are the four things that you're going to use. More importantly, entity manager and metadata, if you understand it, it will be very easy to get started. So I'll explain how all these things work. This is on the client side. On the server side, what you need is pretty simple thing. So as of now, if you can, I'm using a Northwind database. It has customers, orders, order details, products, and categories, right? So it's a simple. There are a lot of other tables. I just chose only those things that we might need to get started, kind of stuff. Okay. Start a new file. This I'm using Visual Studio 2013. If you just start with a simple, excuse me. If you start with the web application, ASP.NET web application, this is again, if you go to Visual Studio 2012, you can start with the MVC4 application, but this actually encompasses the latest stuff, so I'm going to use this. As of now, this is what I added. That is the only thing that I added, and I added 3 other NuGet packages. The first one is a WebAPI 2 NuGet package. By default, your server already, the application already has a .NET WebAPI. So you're just going to add a Breeze server WebAPI 2 version of a component, and once you add that, you need a context provider. I'm using Entity Framework 6. So if you, by default, the template doesn't give you 2012. Sorry, it doesn't give you Entity Framework 6. So you have to go ahead and add a NuGet package for that Entity Framework 6. My bad. Yeah, this is where you can see that I've added 6.1.1. So the context provider, as I told you, will be an interface on the client side as entity manager. And we need an entity EF6, that is Entity Framework 6 context provider. There are the 3 packages that you need and nothing else. For easy usage, we have used Knockout.js. So on the client, if you have to do something on the server side, you just have to do that. Those are the 3 packages plus the entity framework is what I always consider as a starting point. Once you install a Breeze server, it automatically creates a WebAPI config in your app start. Okay, These are the four common things that you always have. So it automatically creates one more thing called Breeze Web API config. If you see this, it is almost equivalent to what you see in your routing Web API config, but it automatically manages routes if any of the APIs come from Breeze slash something, right? So this is the standard code, nothing handwritten. Now I have actually commented out the default route because I don't use it in our application anymore. By default, I'll be using the Breeze APIs. Okay. Next thing is you in a general practice you'll be having multiple for every entity you're going to create a new API controller. Here you don't have to. You just create something called Northwind controller or any controller that you are any name that you want to give. I give a Northwind controller because this is what this database is all about. Okay, so remove everything that you get when I add a new empty what do you call that API controller. You will get a lot of things like get, set, and all of them. Don't have to add anything of that sort. Remove all of them. Put this one line of code, which is basically a context provider for your Northwind entities. Once you have this piece, the very next thing that you need is these two HTTP GET methods. One is a metadata, second one is a save changes. This is a standard code, nothing extra had to be added. As I told you, metadata is the first query from your server. When I say get me list of companies or list of orders or list of users or whatever I'm going to call, the first call it sends to the server is a call to metadata. That metadata will have a schema that you want to expose. Okay. Now, once you have that, it will do the next execution, which is your get customers or get orders, get order details, or anything else that. When I was doing a session last time in WebEd, somebody asked me why I have to send metadata every time. Is there a way to avoid it? So for that, what I have done is I went through a couple of posts on web, and we figured out there's an easy way of doing it also. So what I'm going to do by default is I will be having something called a metadata script writer, which writes the metadata once to your to a file name. I put it as m.js, which will not be seen here, but if I do this and if I show hide hidden files, you'll see that this is m.js. You can see this has a full schema of your database. Okay, you can choose to encrypt it and show. You can do a lot of things, but I kept it very simple. As of now, it just takes the metadata and then shows it. Okay. And writes it to a file that you can use. When I show you the client-side part of it, you will understand it. So, in a nutshell, if you have to start a WebAPI application, what are the things you do? First, you connect to your database, get your models ready, and then even if you're writing Pogo classes, you can still do that, or say do the same stuff that I showed you. One thing is the metadata context. The context that you're going to have is the one which you have chosen in your Pogo classes. Now, first thing that you have to do is include these three packages that I talked about: Breeze Server API, Web API, Breeze Server Context Provider, Breeze Server Context Provider EF6. Make sure you are on the latest version because obviously you don't want to use the older version. That's the only thing that you have to do in this and nothing else. Okay. Once you do this, you will get this file by default. No changes there. In the Web API config, as I told you, if you are okay with every time this guy calling us what do you call it, metadata, you just every time if it calls, if you're fine with that call, we don't have any issues. Most of the times it's a call, same call. There's no change, means it obviously it will not ask for it, but it's a call will go. That's it. So to avoid it, you can write the metadata to file, and I will show you how to do the change in the client side. That's it. 6 lines of here. These 6 lines of code that will make sure your metadata is taken care of, and a couple of configuration here and there, and your web API server is ready. By the way, what I missed is, what are the tables that you want to expose? If you see here, all the exposed functions are purely GET requests or HTTP GET. Where is post? Where is my put or delete? It's not there, right? All of them are taken care of by this guy. When I get the data, if I insert a new data or delete a row or a column, whatever, or delete a row or delete the whole entire set, all of that is managed in an entity manager that I talked about. That guy, when you say save submit from the server, I mean from the client side, it goes to this guy. I am not doing any change here, right? So you can actually make sure, if you want to validate a couple of things like, hey, is this guy authenticated, and all those things, you can add additional attributes and make sure it works. But in simple terms, this is, I mean, if you're doing a POC, there's a breeze, like just like that you can create it. Now, save changes. If there is a new entry, obviously it will not have an identity column, so it will go and create a new entry. If the identity column is there, if the ID is there, it will go and update it. If the ID is, say, marked for deletion, it will delete it. So, two functions, metadata and save changes, that's all you need to get working. Actually, if you do what I talked about here as a metadata script writer, if this is done, you don't have to worry about showcasing this also. You can just hide it. So one line of code, which is setting a context provider, second function, that is your save changes, and that's all you have to do on server side. How cool is that? Now, that's on server side. If I just run it, let me just show you. Oh, sorry, my bad. I have to first run the server side.
Pooran, there is one question. You want to take it up now?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Yeah, so the question is from Saurav. His question is like, is breeze.js supported by all the browser? Means, is the client-side storage possible in all browsers?
Yes, it is possible. Let me
Okay.
explain that in this link. Almost all the browsers support it. Uh, I don't know why my internet is slow, maybe because of the streaming. So almost all the browsers support it. Almost all the mobile browsers also support it. Uh, there's no issue on that part.
Mm-hmm.
There could be some quirks here and there, but because see what we are trying to do in this is just call a REST API call, right? If I'm doing a call to my server, and that is not restricting me to get the data in and out. Specifically, what I'm talking about is cars. If you enable that, you are covered. There's no other change. Uh, is the client-side storage all possible in browser? Yes, it is possible. I will showcase it. How will you store the data under the hood? Obviously, you can store in local storage. You can also implement SQLite if you want. IndexedDB or cookie, both are fine, but it depends on the size of data that you're going to store. That's the only thing, right? I think that answers the question. Did
Yes.
I
Saurav, I hope that has answered your question. If you have further questions, please feel free to just ping us for
yeah.
more questions as well. Yeah.
So I just ran this. Let me just make sure this is the one. I'll just stop it. I'll set this as a startup project. I have the client-side project also in the same project. So let me just run it. If you see this, is it running? Build a succeed. Let's hope it starts without any issues. So I have actually set it to localhost northwind. Let me, yeah. So in that I have gone to APIs, which basically I just made it as help. My bad, just hold on. Yeah. It is loading from the server now and from the application. Let's just wait for it. It's a first time compilation. Yeah. So this is standard Bootstrap stuff. Now if you go to help API, which goes to Northwind help, you will see all the APIs that are there. Is this visible? I hope it is. We have Bree/Northwind metadata, Bree/Northwind save changes. Most of the rest of the stuff are.
Pooran, do you want to? Sorry for interrupting. Can you just zoom in?
Yeah. See here, I will just open
Yes.
a new window, so you'll know exactly what we are seeing here. The Breeze one metadata, it just sends a string. What it is sending, obviously, you'll find it in the other side. Save changes, it just accepts entities, key mappings, everything, all of that. It expects this in the format. This you don't have to worry about you sending this in this format. Internally, it maps that in the same format that you're expecting. So all these three things you don't have to worry about the save result, what you're expecting. And this is your standard, what do you call, standard tables, right? So if you want to customize something, rename something, all of that you can do on your get part of it. If you want to put some additional parameters and all those things, again, all of that you can do. But in very simple terms, you don't have to do that again, because you can do that filtering, sorting, and all those things on the client side itself. Okay. By default, when you're returning, if you want to restrict the columns that you want to send, obviously that you can do here. Beyond that, you don't have to do anything else. That's what I'm talking about. Okay. So this is what is your client side looks like, and you're covered. Okay. Now let's get to this client side. We're talking about a simple web application where I just started the application part of it because I can host it and make sure it is easier to get it done. But none of them actually have anything related to your server-side code. You see this? The content, fonts. I started the web normal, what do you call that? Empty website. So when you add Bootstrap, it will add your glyph icons and all those things. I have added two extra things. If you see here, I have by default Bootstrap. I've added Breeze client, your jQuery, Knockout.js. Okay, Breeze also has, Breeze doesn't expect you to have jQuery. Breeze doesn't expect you to have Knockout.js or any other frameworks. All Breeze.js requires is a framework called Q, which is basically for promises on async methods. For example, if I say on loading, if I say get me this URL, data from this URL, and it's an async call. Now somebody has to say, hey, the data has come, or data came with an error. All of that is provided by the framework called Q. So Q.js is one thing. By default, if you do a NuGet package, you don't have to manually add it. It automatically adds it. If it is not there, then you have to download the Q.js. It's pretty simple. It'll just give you promises against the data that you need. Okay. I added Knockout.js. It supports almost all the frameworks like Ember, AngularJS, or any other framework that you are comfortable with. Okay. Simple jQuery mobile or jQuery web, jQuery UI, any of those things will continue to work because there is no dependency with any of the other frameworks. It doesn't even have a relation with jQuery by default, right? So that's the beauty of Breeze.js. Okay, so no changes in any of the code that we are writing. It simply works. Now coming to your HTML, I'll hide this part for a while. So I have a label called customer list which says customer, and I want to get all the customer names, just the customer names, into my dropdown. If you want to have additional things like IDs and all those things, that also will come. But by default, I'm passing the whole customer object on selection to current customer. all of you know, I presume all of you know about data dash bind. If you don't know about that, look for data dash attributes in Google. You will get a lot of hints on how to get started with that. It's a pretty cool concept of making sure you can add your own parameters and to get it to work kind of stuff. Now, let's start with a very simple concept of select customer list. I mean, like I'm saying, I'm getting the list of all the customers' names from the database, uh, and I'm just retrieving customer name. And if I select, by default, the value of that will go to current customer. Okay. Now this is get request, right? Now I want to show them in an input table, what do you call text boxes, and I want to, if I edit and I want to save changes of that. So I'm actually showcasing three things. Sorry, two things. One is get and update, and one more thing is how to get the data part of it. I'm going to show only those three things as of today. As of now, if you see, I'm saying with the current customer, I have a form with a post. The selected customer, I want to just pull the contact's name and phone number. If I change anything in this, I have on click of that save button, I'm going to do parent.save changes. Now, this is the simplest example. If you go to the website that I talked about, you have quite a good number of examples on how to query and all those things. The idea of this session is to make sure you get started with this in a very simple way and understand how easy it is to build. So I talked about simple things like get and set, right? So you'll have more things here. I'll explain this once I come back. Let me just go back to this. Now I've added jQuery because Knockout requires it, and we have qmin, and you have your breezemin. That's it, right? Now I told you about local metadata, right? I'm going to first get the this is how you load data. Check if it is there in our server. I have stored it or not. File ref get create element script. File ref set attribute the JavaScript, and I'm going to just store the file, data of that file. So this function I'm going to call here. I'll just explain that. So what I'm saying is, if the item, the metadata that I talked about, if it is already there in my local storage, go ahead and load it. Else, go to this URL, that is load JScript, JS file, and get the data file, and then return that to your value that you are looking for. So this local metadata that you're looking at is actually storing the complete metadata of the file, and that you're going to use in your metadata requests for going forward. If you don't want to do this, it's not hard and fast rule. There's the hack that we did post the event because someone asked how to avoid number of calls. If by default, if it says have server metadata to true, it will ask for data every time. If you don't want it, this is the way to avoid it. Okay, I'll come to this in a while. I'm going to say this is my service. This is the URL where I'm going to have all the requests from, and the manager that I'm going to use is entity manager, breeze.entity manager. Clear so far? I hope so. So I told you about two things, right? Metadata, entity manager. They're the only two things that you need. Rest all is query. Okay. Now you set these parameters, and then you're going to variables, and then you're going to start with the data service. I'm going to start with the data service, which says new data service. Service name is the name that you defined earlier, and say where is the data from? Is it local or from the server? That's what it is. This is the first line setting that we're going to do. Next is the metadata that you have. You have to store that. So this is what you're going to do. Initialize the metadata, and as of now, you have local metadata that we showcased here. Instead of that, you can actually give a URL. It will go and get the data from the server. Okay. Then create an entity manager. which says it has to use this data store. These are basic settings for your Breeze.js on the client side. So if you're using a single page application, this can go into the base controller of AngularJS, or it can be if you're doing a simple what do you call simple multi-page application, this can be the thing that you're going to store. So this is you can put this as a JS file and load it every time if you want in each of these pages. If it is a multiple page, I mean, this is or you can always have it in a master page and never worry about it. Okay, so this whole thing has to remain constant. Basically, you're not doing anything related to getting data or sending data. This is your configuration on your client side. Okay, now you have to start with your own code, right? Basically, you have to get the data. What it does here is I just started with a local variable that I have. This is, I'm going to say create entity manager. Create entity manager is a function within your either code, standard setup code. It will go and get all the basic data, basic setting. It sets up the basic things that you need. Okay, I don't know how to put it. Simple things. Now you start with your customer, this one, right? Now it always relies on observable arrays. If you don't know what observable arrays is, you just have to look up more on that. Observable array in nutshell is an array that keeps track of all the changes and automatically propagates to all the elements which is bound. For example, if I'm in a simple way, if I can say I have a text box, as soon as I type in text box, a label is automatically populated. In simple terms, that's what it is. So you can have observable element, or simple variables or arrays. As of now, customers is the data that you're going to get, so I'm using KO dot observable array. KO is basically for Knockout.js. If you're using any other framework, you have to find the equivalent of observable array that you're going to have. Okay, var customers is equal to KO dot observable array. The current customer is the KO observable. I told you, right? This is one row. This is an array. In that array, the selected one is a observable row. On load, you're going to call a Breeze entity from customers. Customers is what you expose there. So if you want to give a name, I don't want to call them customers. I want to call them partners. Though the database, it has customers. If you expose it as partners on the server side, you can just say breeze.entityQuery from partners instead of the word customers. Basically, as of now, I'm not changing anything else, so it is customers. Okay, this is the query that you're going to send. You can extend this. I'm going to talk about it a bit later, but this is the basic one. Return my entity manager execute query, right? The query, if on execution of this query, you're going to say if the query is succeeded or failed. So the then and fail are basically coming from your Q.js that we talked about. These are called promises. That means on any async query, whether it is succeeded or failed, is a promise that async method is going to give. Now here the Q.js is giving that functionality for this call. So then query succeeded. If it is failed, query failed. Right? This is the thing that you're talking about, Q.js. Beyond this, there is no other dependency. On query succeeded, what you're doing? You're saying my.vm vm.customers for this one, right? vm.customers is the data.results. The data is an output, and if the error is there, it will send you an error. This is for load. Another function that you have is save changes. If something is gone, if something has changed, added, updated, deleted, by default you're going to call my.entityManager save changes. One thing to observe is, by default, if it succeeds, it doesn't give back any value that you need. And it says it succeeded, that's it, right? If it fails, hardly it fails, but if it fails, it'll just give a function error message that you're going to worry about. So you will have then, you will not have then for save changes in simple terms. Okay. So you have your, this is your query for every data get or set. That's it. Now this function is supposed to return something, right? If I am saying customers, it will send the customers. You can have different names for this, but I kept it same for a brevity. So customers are mapped to customers, current customer is mapped to current customer that we talked about. Load is load function. If somebody says on the external side load, save changes, save changes. This is your function that you're going to call. My.vm.load and ko.apply bindings my VM. So yeah, during that session when I was there, I was actually explaining these in a different terms. This was not there. We wrote the code and then we added this code and all those things. But this has already been this is completely done code. So I'm just explaining how the code is actually. So if you see, a simple data pull and push is what this whole application is all about. Just give me a minute. Sorry about that. So where were we? Yeah, index.html, right? So if you look at it, my UI code, if I'm actually separating it out, this can be an HTML file. This part of the code that we are talking about will be in your JS file, so it's separate concern. This is again, if you're doing an MVN style, all of this can be separated out without any references. That's the beauty of this code. Okay. I saw this. Okay, in which type of application scenario Breeze JS fit best? Saurav, let me take this question. Saurav, this is best suited for mobile applications. If you're writing offline kind of application that's supposed to be offline, right? Now, if you're looking at it in very simple terms, I don't want my mobile website to be hosted on my server. I just have to take this code and put it as part of the application itself. So if you have to host an application within a mobile application, you need to have a server and all, but PhoneGap takes care of it. It just loads a file. It doesn't have any server-side constructs. It's just a pure HTML, JavaScript, CSS that works very well within a mobile browser, which has which doesn't have any server-side requests, right? So it's very simple. So that's the best way. I mean, most of the mobile applications that I've seen are hybrid applications render in this format. Now, as I told you, Breeze.js doesn't have any links with, any dependency with any other frameworks like jQuery or anything of the sort. So it can be used independently along with any other frameworks that you like. Most of the guys use Backbone.js, Ember, Angular. Angular is pretty popular now, so you can use them without any issues. That's the beauty of Breeze.js. Another advantage is basically your server-side code that we're talking about can lie on a different server. The HTML part of it can be just hosted on a simple, what do you call that? How do I put it? I hosted in Amazon S3 service in some cases. Amazon S3 service is basically a file server, right? It doesn't have any server-side construct. You cannot put ASP.NET, ASPX file and run it. So you can just host these files, HTML, JavaScript, CSS files, the whole bundle that we're talking about onto a server. I mean, forget about references, properties, or anything else. You just need this HTML, JavaScript, CSS, and post it on S3 server, Dropbox. In Dropbox has a folder called, if you create a folder called public and you host these files, you can actually browse them. The point that I'm making is it's pure HTML, JavaScript, CSS. It can be run from your normal desktop also. Take that piece of code out and your server just worries about APIs and it doesn't render out any UI, right? That again reduces the load on your server, which can be utilized for just rendering the API requests and nothing else. So world is moving towards this, and Breeze.js helps you get there much faster. I have a table, I have a server, the SQL server, which has around 200 tables. I don't know when I will create so many APIs and all those things, right? All I have to do is I don't have to worry about that. What are the API? What are the tables that I need to get access to that you can just manipulate? Just get them into your Northwind data model. This model that we're talking about, and expose it. And I don't have to just. I just have to do this match and just expose the GET request, nothing else. That's the beauty of Breeze.js. That's how. This is best suited if you're writing a POC, I understand, but this is a production ready code. Okay, I understand. This is where your authentication, encryption, and all those things will come into picture. You can have additional attributes on top of this, saying that okay, this has to be authorized or allow anonymous, because if it is a login, it has to be anonymous. All those things you'll have to do, but that's the only code that you're going to maintain, not any other piece of code. That's the beauty of this whole application layout. Hope that explains your. That explains the question that you had. Let me just quickly move on. So let me just run this, how it looks. Let's see. When I run this, it just throws up that HTML file, right? It has to load the Java data from the server. Let's see why it is not doing it. Oh, it's done. See that? These are all the tables. These are all the customers that I have now. I change anything. You see that? This is the power of that observable field that you had. I change anything. If I say I want to update it to this, okay, let me show you what are the changes that go in. See this? It takes the whole thing and just sends back maybe the changes that you've done, and then I change it. I say I want to just make it to 2 to 6, and which is the one we changed? Let's say 2 to 6. Let me check the first one. Let me add, actually this is dash here and to here. Save changes. Let me go back to Anna. 2 to 5 is changed to 2 to 6. This is already changed. That means this data save is happening on the server itself, right? On save changes, it just calls the server. Let me just quickly refresh the screen and I'll show you what are the requests that it gets. Index.html, the basic 6 things. You saw this Breeze min.js and customers. Actually, because I ran this earlier, it is already requested for that m.js and it is in local storage. Where can I see that? In the local storage. Local storage. Yes. My local storage as hem. This is your metadata. See that? It's that simple. I understand this is not a the great example for enterprise grade applications, but I'm saying you got the basics of it. I hope that explains how easy it is to build a simple POC to a full-fledged code. Full-fledged code, again, the changes that you're going to do is mainly on the server side, basically for the data access, and you are covered for the rest of the thing. Okay, now let's come back and see what else Breeze.js can do. If you go to Breeze.js homepage, if you hit the tutorials, you'll get the basic idea. I told you about that, right? Breeze entity query is just from customers, right? If you want to extend it, like where the company name starts with the order by, all this you can do. Most of these things are, again, if you look at it, if you have worked with OData, this is almost exactly what OData can do. Okay, async with promises that I told you, your then and fail. On save changes you can still do, but I'm saying nobody does it. You just say fail. That's what it is. Change tracking, it automatically takes care of all the changes that you're going to make. So you have save changes. I told you about entity aspects. If you want to create on property change, it will automatically, it internally does it internally. You don't have to do it. But what I'm saying is every change in the collection, it keeps internally mapping it. If something is changed, you can also mark it as dirty, and then at save, it will take all the items that are changed, which are dirty, and it will go ahead and update. You can also listen for validation errors if you want. Say for example, this column is mandatory, first name is mandatory, last name, all of that you can get it from the server again if you mapped it properly. That's what this is all about. Data binding we saw. I explained you data binding. If you're doing AngularJS, again, EMP first name, you see this manager entity query, same thing. Scope, you're going to set, if you know AngularJS, you will understand it. Scope, dollar scope is the entry point and exit point for most of the things. So scope dot employees is equal to data dot results, and you're covered. That's what this is all about. So you're going to say this is actually listing all the employees, first name and last name in a template. Okay, query with related queries. Okay, you can say as of now this is orders. Orders doesn't have all the details that you need. It actually need who is the customer who has ordered and what are the products he has ordered. So that's where you're going to use something called expand using manager, and then you're going to execute. Again, this is your standard promises. So this is the reason I was telling you don't have to really worry about writing most of the server-side queries. You can still write server-side queries, import them as functions and all those things, but there's another simplest way you can actually navigate most of the entities on client side itself. Order, you got the order, navigate the related queries in the cache. You have orders is ordered results, and then your order customer, order details of the product. See, it's pretty straightforward way of saying, okay, I can call any any table and browse through the details and all those things without much of an issue. Now, entity graphs, again, you're going to say order by multiple tables and all, right? You can select, say you are selecting from orders, but you want the company name from customer table, right? And order by the company name and ship date. All these things you can do. These are called projection queries. The select which will expand to more items, and you just choose what you want. That's what it is all about. That's called projection. So if you understand, orders has like 6 columns. I just need only 2 columns, the data from 2 columns. That's what is projection all about. Query the server. We saw this. There's no. I mean, this is exactly what we're talking about. We can execute. This is another thing that we finished. Asynchronously, you're calling this. That's another thing. Execute the query synchronously on local cache. So you can actually synchronize your local cache if you're done it, and then check the by default check cache first. Okay, this is what I was talking about. In one of the examples that we saw, one example is this piece, right? Just look at this piece. Like I got the say country list, state list, and then city list. Obviously, they won't change, right? This is a lookup data. You can completely use local storage or IndexedDB or IndexedDB. Is it supported by the browser? That we have to figure out first. What is the for that you can use? Can I use? I hope everybody knows this. Caniuse.com. Go to this. Check if IndexedDB or IndexedDB. This is what you want, right? Which all browser support. IE11 there's a partial support, so it may not work in Windows Phone also. If you look at it, Firefox it works, Chrome works, Safari in some versions, Opera in some versions. So you can figure out what all supported. SQLite again. These two guys don't support. So if you're writing for Android alone, you can look at it, right? Android browser supports it, BlackBerry supports it. So you can explore local storage, all of them support, right? I don't know, Opera Mini doesn't support, maybe if you have to look, if you use modernizer, modernizer, let's search for it. So if you use modernizer and use all these local storage and all those things, say on Opera Mini, if it is not supported, what is the other way of doing it? Maybe it will store it as a variable somewhere and then allows you to use it, or it can use cookie or anything else internally. So this guy, what it does is it allows you a fallback mechanism. So for example, if a video tag is allowed in HTML5, your older browser doesn't support it, it actually creates a ActiveX control or something which will work on that automatically. So you just have to use modernizer in your base, this one, and it will take care of most of the UI elements or functions that we are talking about. So you can still use local storage for this activity, for this application, because your modernizer will figure out how to store the data and retrieve it just the way latest browser supports local storage. That's the headache of modernizer. So trust it and it will work. That's what it is. Coming back to this, save changes offline. I told you, if you're not connected online, it will still allow you to save the changes in your local storage. And then when the connection is up there, it will go and update the data. That's what you can get it to work. So if I am doing a simple to-do list, if there is no connection, it will still do the additions of all the new entries, and you will save locally. Once the connection is done, for the next one, you can always go ahead and send the data back to your server. That's what this whole thing is all about. Samples, those are pretty cool. So there are multiple combinations where how you can use this. So Angular and Entity Framework, that's what we saw. There's a beautiful example to do Angular. If you're using OData server directly, you can use ASP.NET WebAPI and Entity Framework. If you're using Durandal, this is another framework, you can use it. Knockout, Require.js. Require.js is supported and without any issues with AngularJS and with Breeze.js. There are a lot of examples. If you're using Azure Mobile Services, there are some examples, so you can get started like this. If you're doing a pure Node.js, Angular, MongoDB application also, client side of Breeze.js can be used. There are a couple of examples, like if you're using NoDB, NoSQLDB, or anything of sort, Entity Framework. Yeah, there are pretty good number of examples that you can get started with, run through it. There's an extensive documentation. So I told you about queries, right? Different types of queries. So simple conditions, compound conditions with predicates. You write all your predicates and add all the predicates one shot and do a query. It still works. That's the beauty of it. Order by, I told you about OData, right? Say where conditions and filtering, updating, order by ascending, descending, all of that continuously work without any issues. If you're doing paging, you can use skip and take, so you don't have to do anything on the server side. You don't have to page it on the server side. You, from the client side, request only that data. I want 6th row to 10th row only. That's what you can send, and that's what is skip and take all about. I told you about projection. I just need only specific columns. That's how we can get it. Eager loading, if you want to do, you can. It's pretty much possible. Query by key, possible. Query with bag of entries. Entities, like you have multiple of them. One shot, if you want to do, you can do that. So all these are with examples. You can just explore more from this site. Now, any questions?
Okay, there is one here, but it's a general question on is there any kind of video tutorial or something where people can get started with it?
Yes, there are a lot of them. If you go to plural site, there are a couple of them. Breeze.js is pretty commonly used. So there are so many tools. Sorry, Breeze.js alone. This is one, web applications, Angular, Breeze. doc-centric ways, your page, single page startups, how you're going to do. Most of these are available online. I'll tell you, if you go through this tutorials, these tutorials are real good. So server side, if you're configured, you want to do a simple entry. I mean, they expect you to copy this and paste here and run through the tutorials. There are a lot of tutorials like this. You can say, I'm doing an Angular query, knockout query. If I'm doing knockout, more advanced query, it'll tell you step by step what it expects and how to do it. I mean, it will tell you how easy it is to get started with. Okay, there are basic ones, and then the docs are pretty extensive. Videos in YouTube also, there I've seen some of them. Let me quickly find them. Sorry, please. Yeah, how to use Breeze.js. There are a lot of tutorials. One more thing is John Papa has done a couple of tutorials. I told you, I think in tutorial site you can find it. Single page jumpstart and essential knockout. This also has a bit of stuff. So these guys, John Papa has actually gone ahead and written a framework called Hot Towel. You can use Hot Towel also to get started. Okay, let me find that. Hot Towel. With Angular, I think it's written, yes. Hot Towel as single page application. If you want to start with a single page application, this is what you can use. These are pretty simple things. If you're actually into single page application, you will love this. This is available as a NuGet package also nowadays. So it internally uses Breeze.js, Durandal, Knockout.js, Require.js, and Toaster. Toaster is another one. Basically, it gives you a small toast at the bottom kind of stuff, or wherever you can configure. It has all these things by default. You just have to say install package Hot Towel or go to NuGet package and do it. This has a pretty neat UI to get started. Most of the I've seen a couple of companies using it. It's pretty simple to use. And then this basically uses Durandal, so you have to just understand how Durandal works. Durandal is another one which will help you get on board much faster, specifically the UI. So most of the tutorials are there. You just have to run through it. There are a couple of videos. YouTube has a lot of them, as I just saw, right? AngularJS, Breeze.js, how to use it. Yeah, this is the one which I was talking about, which showcases the Hot Towel. I don't know where it is, but exactly which section it shows. My bad. Let me just explain it. Yeah, this is what the UI looks like, the Hot Towel. You have the left side menu that you can configure. This is like your normal YouTube, right? On the left side. And then these are the toasters which will come on top and say, hey, somebody has said hi or something or such, those things. And these are like metro style buttons and all, and boxes that you can use. This is what Hot Towel gives you one shot without much of a change. So, and then you can go ahead and customize, put login screens and all those things around it. So that's what is Hot Towel about. So Breeze, as I told you, there are a lot of examples and sample examples that you can run through. There is something called Breeze Shop Beta, which allows you to do on the spell. Say if you're writing a Windows applications, phone applications, native phone applications, you can use this. If you're using Xamarin, you can use Breeze Shop and make sure you connect to the server using that Breeze Shop client. So this is another thing that you can explore if you would like server-side coding, client-side coding, but using C#, not with JavaScript. Okay. So any other questions?
No, Pooran. I think that's all the questions that we have for now.
Okay. Hope all of you understood how easy it is to build Breeze.js applications. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to me on any of these LinkedIn, like I have LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, anywhere you can paste me, or you can, if you are also on my Facebook, you can, we can have more discussion on that. Please join BDotnet. You will have almost all the things ready. You have most of the guys, all these guys whom you're seeing are all MVPs. They'll be really able to help you out anytime you have stuck with any of the .NET issues. It's not related to, if it is not, I mean, it's not limited to one framework, but entire any .NET framework that you are working with. So a lot of questions are there. Just this is a place to look for all the time. Facebook.com groups B.net. Hexhackers, I told you about Hexhackers Co. This is basically on Xamarin. If you go to hexhackers.co, you will get more information about that. BDotnet, every weekend, I mean, every week we have Wednesday Hangouts where people like me come up and showcase a lot of technologies, real cool ones, the latest ones, the old ones. That way you can be apprised about. So, hope this session was helpful. I will hand it over to Senthil.
Yeah, thanks, Puran, for such a wonderful session. I hope it was a really useful session for everyone. You can watch this session, the recordings of this session from our B.net YouTube channel. The URL to view the video is youtube.com/b.net TV. I repeat again, it's youtube.com/b.net TV. So until our next Hangout, signing off for today's session. Thanks everyone.
Thanks a lot.